We are in Kaplankaya on the southwestern coast of Turkey for our annual gathering, Harvest Series. Here we bring together some of the greatest minds, with expert speakers, renowned practitioners, and talented performers, all aimed at opening our minds, creating curiosity, and imagining a brighter future. I hope you'll enjoy this episode. Hello, let's talk about how to live longer once again with Dr. Mark Hyman. Mark is a physician and functional expert medicine who focuses on longevity and wellness. During the last episode of the Harvest podcast series, we talked a lot about food, the good food to have. And today we're going to talk about longevity and what are the techniques to live longer and to have a healthy life. So the secrets to living your longest, healthiest life, Young Forever, is the latest book of Mark Hyman. Hello, Mark.
Hello. How are you? I actually
so
wrote
much.
that book at Harvest last year.
Wow, amazing. So, and it's been the number one book of America when it came out. So congratulations.
Yes, thank
It's
you.
been a big success.
Thank you.
Can you tell us, share a little bit of what you're explaining? Why do we age? And we've identified now some causes of aging, and how can we fight against this?
Yeah, it's interesting. Most of us assume as we get older, we have to get sicker and more frail and decrepit and lose function and not be vibrant and healthy. But what we now know is that those things that happen to us that we see around us as we age is actually abnormal aging. And scientists are now considering this to be a disease that we can treat. We can't, cure death, but we can very much cure many or prevent many of the conditions as we get older that seem to interrupt the quality of our life. The last 20% of people's life is usually spent in poor health. Their health span is much shorter than their lifespan. So they may live to be 80, but the last 20 years are sick and not functioning. So we now know that by activating certain ancient embedded longevity pathways, survival pathways, we can not only improve our lifespan, but we can improve our health span and prevent many of the diseases that we see as we get older. If we try to treat heart disease and cancer and diabetes and Alzheimer's, the things that really kill us as we get older, we're going to be playing what we call whack-a-mole, where we just push one down with the drug, this one with the drug, that one with the drug, and we never really cure or get them better. But now we know that if we address the underlying root causes, the things that go wrong as we age, that scientists have now identified as what they call the hallmarks of aging, we can actually maybe extend life by 30 or 40 years. If we cured all heart disease and cancer from the face of the planet, we would only get an extension of life by 5 to 7 years. If we get to understand and address the hallmarks of aging, we can extend life by 30 or 40 years. That means living to be 120 years old in good health. So the goal and the purpose of my book is to try to help people understand that what we've come to accept as normal is not, that we can actually understand how locked within us are these ancient survival pathways, these ancient longevity switches that we can learn how to turn on, and we can stop interfering with them, which is what we do with our typical lifestyle. And we can have a much more robust, healthy life. And we can not only prevent these conditions, but we can reverse our biological age.
But when you see people also aging, like most of the time when you ask them how they're doing, it's like, oh, I'm suffering from the back, from my legs, from everything. So to live longer, yes, but
yes, you don't want to be feeling frail and dysfunctional and aches and pains and have this medication, that medication.
Yeah.
The key is that you can actually remain extremely functional, vibrant, well over 100 years old. I traveled to the blue zones, Ikaria, which is not far from here, and Turkey, which is in Greece. I traveled to Sardinia. I visited the blue zones there. And they have people very robust at over 100 years old who are still hiking the mountains, who are doing really active things as part of their community, who are still mentally engaged. So we actually know that, and it's not because they live in these genetically unique places where the genes are different. They're the same as everybody else. They just have habits that automatically activate these longevity pathways.
Okay, so what's the number one habit?
Well, I think as we've become to describe these hallmarks of aging, there's many of them, and maybe I'll just go through what they are, and then I'll talk about how they're regulated, because These are underneath all diseases. And if you go upstream and treat these, you don't have to treat the diseases. So the first one and the most important is we call it deregulated nutrient sensing. And that means how our bodies interact with our food and how that regulates these ancient survival pathways. And I'm going to come back to that. But this is the major one that regulates even many of the others, like DNA damage or changes in our epigenome or inflammation or mitochondrial changes or damaged proteins or shortened telomeres or stem cell exhaustion or changes in our microbiome or altered cell communication systems. These are all influenced by many factors, primarily our diet, exercise, our beliefs, our thoughts actually regulate our gene expression. And also environmental things like environmental toxins or infections or allergens. These are things that actually cause imbalance and drive changes in these hallmarks that accelerate aging. And if we understood actually how to address the root causes of those hallmarks through lifestyle and sometimes through techniques that we'll talk about, like hormesis, which is various kinds of stresses that activate our body's pathways. Like when you exercise, you're stressing your muscles, so your muscles grow stronger. That's called hormesis.
Okay.
Or through various techniques that we may want to use, like medications or advanced techniques like hyperbaric oxygen or plasmapheresis or ozone or stem cells or exosomes. These are things that are a little bit more out of reach for people, but they can activate many of these ancient embedded survival pathways. So the goal of my book, Young Forever, was to give people a roadmap, a toolkit to activate these ancient pathways. So the most important one is how we interact with food. So it's not just what we eat, it's when we eat, and it's the type of food we eat, all regulate these ancient pathways. We have a system for sensing food, either too much or too little. If we have too much sugar and carbohydrates and protein, it overstimulates the growth pathways. So you can get cancer, you gain weight, you get inflammation, you get all these damaging things. If you have not enough, you starve, then you then activate other pathways that are good pathways, because starving is actually a signal to the body that I need to do something to make sure I don't die.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
And so when you, for example, have an overnight fast, like for 12, or ideally even 14 or 16 hours, or a longer fast for a day or 2 or 3, that is a signal to the body that there's a danger, right? This is what we call hormesis. This is a stress. And the body then kicks into gear and starts cleanup. And so embedded within us is this ancient system for repair, regeneration, renewal, and we can activate that system very easily by doing certain techniques. For example, like doing a 16-night overnight fast, that causes what we call autophagy, which cleans up our cells and our old parts and tissues. Or we can, for example, eat certain foods that activate these pathways properly, that are various phytochemicals, something in pomegranate or green tea, or maybe in curcumin, or various kinds of compounds that we have available to us through food actually are designed to activate some of these ancient pathways. So the first one is mTOR. Now, mTOR is something people might have heard about, which is something that gets stimulated by protein and carbohydrates. Now, if you overstimulate it, you end up having a problem with cancer and other overgrowth of tissues and weight gain and other things. But if you don't stimulate it enough, you end up with loss of muscle, which is what happens as we get older. We lose muscle, we become frail and weak. So you have to interrupt its function through inhibiting it and stopping it for a period of time, giving it a rest, so you can actually clean up and do all the repair work and activate these ancient switches that reprogram our genes, that repair our DNA, that lengthen our telomeres, that reduce inflammation, that prevent cancer. And then you also need to stimulate it with adequate protein after a fast. So you stimulate it by fasting, right? Or you inhibit it by fasting, and then you stimulate it by after with protein. Yeah. So you basically ideally would do a 16-hour overnight fast and then have 30 or 40 grams of high quality protein, usually animal protein, because plant proteins don't have a key amino acid, leucine, to turn on muscle growth. So one of the keys to maintaining a vibrant long life is to maintain your muscle. Because if you lose muscle, you become frail. And it's not just because you're weaker, it's because your muscle is a metabolic organ. So you end up becoming more insulin resistant and pre-diabetic, and your testosterone goes down, your growth hormone goes down, your stress hormones go up, your inflammation levels go up. You get all these problems when you lose muscle. It becomes replaced by fat. So you need the good protein after a fast when you refeed, and that creates a whole wonderful cascade of building muscle. So that's a kind of a key, for example, way to activate one of these pathways.
Okay, wonderful. But meat should be the first thing you eat, or
not necessarily meat. Could be eggs. Could be protein shake.
But protein should be the first thing you
yes,
put in your body.
Yes,
okay.
and in most of the culture in America and increasingly around the world is we eat sugar for breakfast. We eat dessert for breakfast. Yeah. We have bagels, muffins, croissants, pastries, cereal, sugar for breakfast. Sweetened coffees. This is the worst thing we can do if you want to live a long, healthy life.
Yeah,
it's delicious, but it's not good for you. So protein feeding, and then the other main way we get into trouble with aging is the insulin pathway. So there's mTOR and insulin signaling pathway. Those are activated by too much. Now you need to have some stimulation of these, but you don't want it too much. And insulin is stimulated by too much sugar or flour. Okay. And we eat so much of this in America. We eat 152 pounds of sugar, 133 pounds of flour per person per year.
Okay.
So that's like a pound a day almost. That stimulates these pathway called insulin signaling, which leads to growth of belly fat. That belly fat causes heart disease, cancer, diabetes, dementia. It's the worst thing for us. And so that is one of the most dramatic things that accelerates aging and damages all these hallmarks. So reducing sugar and starch is really important. So overnight, 12 to 16-hour fast, protein in the morning, and cut down on sugar and starch or eliminate. Yeah. Okay. And then the other two, those two pathways detect, abundance. And one of them actually, mTOR, there's a drug that scientists are researching now called rapamycin. Rapamycin was a compound discovered on the island, Easter Island of Rapa Nui.
Okay.
And they found that this was they thought it was maybe some special drug. They found it was a bad antifungal, but it didn't really work. They use it in transplant medicine to modulate immunity. Taken every day, it suppresses your immune system. But scientists found if you take it, for example, once a week, it actually can inhibit mTOR and may extend life by 10 to 20%. If you live to 80 years old, that might be another 8 years. So it can have real life extension properties, and it also helps rejuvenate your body. So there's little ways we may be able to stimulate mTOR in the right ways with protein and inhibit it in other times with certain medication or lifestyle. Exercise, by the way, also does the same thing. And then there's those two pathways, mTOR and insulin signaling, detect too much of stuff, too much sugar or starch, too much protein. The other two pathways, AMPK and sirtuins, detect scarcity. So when you're not eating enough or you don't have enough food, they get activated. And what that does is that kicks into a cascade of actually causing DNA repair and shutting off inflammation and activating cancer suppressing genes and many, many other benefits, increasing antioxidant systems, making you more insulin resistant, fixing your mitochondria. So they really have this broad cascade of benefits that actually are occurring because we're giving the body like a lack of food. But you can also stimulate those pathways with various compounds like NAD. People have heard about NAD that stimulates, or NMN that stimulates the sirtuin pathway, which causes all these benefits, or certain plant compounds like quercetin or urolithin A stimulate the AMPK, and quercetin is like a supplement you can take, and I take that regularly, for example, for longevity. So there's a way of using diet and supplements, and the other way to address these is through various activities like exercise will also have broad-reaching effects on these four pathways in a positive way. It's both strength training, cardio training. So there's many, many ways that we can actually turn on these ancient embedded longevity switches and help us live a longer, healthier life.
Okay. And either way, like we can do it wrong. Like if we try, for example, to do that, or if we have, if we don't eat, but for only 12 hours, or if we don't eat for 20 hours, then it becomes wrong. Or if we do it if a woman does it too many times a week, or how can we, so now that we have the big principles, how do we right?
Well, it's pretty simple in terms of when you think about what to eat. And no one should eat within 12-hour window. In other words, everybody can do a 12-hour overnight fast.
Yeah,
you eat at dinner at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. You have breakfast at 7 a.m. Right? That's easy.
It's a 14-hour
14-hour fast is eat dinner at 7, have breakfast at 9. So it's not that hard. 16 hours is a little longer. If you're frail, if you're thin, if you have, various kinds of issues, you may not want to do that, or you might not tolerate it. Women may have a harder time. If you're very overweight, it's great. If you have diabetes, it's great. And it works to help reverse that. And some people can tolerate longer fast. And so it's understanding this is personalized. And in the book, Young Forever, I talk how to personalize it. But it's important to understand we all need to have that break, because that's when cleanup happens. That's when repair happens. That's when our anti-aging mechanisms kick into gear and help us, extend our health span and our lifespan. And what's really interesting, Rose, is that we can measure our chronological age through the passing of years. Our biological age we measure through a special type of look at our DNA. Mm-hmm. We call this a DNA methylation test. And scientists now have created a biological clock, that we can now measure based on how our genes are programmed through what we call our epigenome. Our genes are fixed, but our epigenome is the control mechanism of our genes. It's like the piano player, whereas our genes are the piano, our epigenome is the piano player. We now can regulate our epigenome and can reverse our biological age. So I'm 63 chronologically, but biologically I'm 43.
Wow.
So
that's great.
I have the biological age of a 43-year-old, and I can actually measure that. And you can then do lifestyle interventions or take various supplements and actually reverse your biological age.
Oh, you can do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is many studies have shown that by simple things like taking vitamin D, you can reverse it by year. Eating a healthy diet, you can reverse it by year. Doing more aggressive treatments, for example, a whole elimination anti-inflammatory diet, you can reverse your biological by 3 years and 8 months by doing an aggressive functional medicine approach. So some supplements may reverse it by 5 to 7 years. So there's ways we can now intervene and understand the mechanisms at the root cause of aging and reverse our biological age.
Wow, that's wonderful. And what are the little things that we think are right and are not right?
What are the myths about aging and disease?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the challenges is that people struggle with is that some people are now saying, in order to live a long life, we have to inhibit mTOR. And we have to do that by fasting, but also by not eating protein.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people believe that if you're vegan, it's a better way to extend your life. Unfortunately, that's not true. There was a woman named Emma Morano who lived to be 117 years old. And when she was in her 90s, her doctor told her to eat 150 grams of meat every day because she was frail, and she lived to be 117. So what happens is if you just understand the basic physiology of how we build muscle, we need to actually have a certain amount of amino acids that are from protein. And one of them in particular is called leucine. This is what we call a rate-limiting amino acid, meaning if you don't have this, you can't turn on the switch to build muscle. It's like if you put ingredients on this pot of a stove and you want to make soup, you have to turn the fire on. So this leucine is like the switch that turns the muscle synthesis. We call it muscle protein synthesis. To build muscle, you need to turn on this pathway, and you need 2.5 grams of leucine in a 30-gram serving of protein. If you don't have that, it doesn't work. So unfortunately, if you see people who are vegan, they tend to be frail, they have lower muscle mass. So muscle is the currency of longevity. So besides the overnight fast, besides starting with protein in the morning, and besides eating a very phytochemically rich diet with lots of colorful fruits and vegetables, the most important thing as we age is resistance training. And doing the protein about, within an hour or two after that is when you actually then build the most muscle.
Is there like a minimum of exercise a week?
I mean, I think people usually with a half an hour, 3 times a week can achieve most of the benefits. And it's never too late to start. People can start in their 80s and see a traumatic benefit. Now, there is something called anabolic resistance. As you get older, you have to eat more protein and you have to do more work to build muscle because it's just harder. When you're younger, you have more hormones, you have other things that help. So when you're older, you can do it. But I've noticed I've been able to build a lot of muscle, even at 63 years old, compared to when I was, 53.
Okay. And what the play of the role of sleep in all that?
Well, sleep is really incredibly important. And I think, the main pillars of lifestyle are what you eat, how you exercise, how you manage stress, and sleep.
Yeah.
And sleep is so critical because if you don't sleep, your body can't repair and heal. At night is when you renew. Your brain cleans out all the debris that accumulates during the day through its own cleaning system called the lymphatic system. Your hormones reset and you become higher in growth hormone, lower in cortisol, and that allows your body to repair and renew. So many of the repair mechanisms happen at night. Yeah. And so it's really important to get adequate and good sleep. And so in the book,
a lot of people are struggling like to sleep and are very stressed. When you had like particularly a stressing life, or even if you're retired, like you still can't manage to sleep.
Yeah, well, we do so many things in our culture to interrupt sleep, right? If we go out in the wilderness and we have no technology and we sleep with the sun and wake with the sun and we live in a rhythm, we will find our way back to a good sleep. But most people have bright lights. They have, their devices at night. They're working and eating, answering emails, so they go to bed. They're overstimulated. They're drinking too much caffeine or alcohol. So, we are, whether we like it or not, biological organisms. And so we have to actually respect that and learn how to regulate our days so that we can get adequate sleep and change our environment. And I go through many tips, whether it's, keeping the room cold, keeping it quiet, not eating 3 hours before bed, making sure you have bright light in the morning to re-stimulate your pineal gland in the right way for your circadian rhythms, taking magnesium, maybe some herbs. All these things can be really, really helpful to help people reset.
When do you, if you don't do the test to check how old you are, what are the signs that you're older than you should be? Like is being overweight, for example, a sign, unfortunately?
I mean, I think, just to reiterate, the biggest driver of almost all the disease of aging is what we call insulin resistance, which means that when you eat sugar or starch, your body produces more insulin to get it inside the cells because your cells are resistant. Okay. And so that phenomena of insulin resistance is caused by eating way too much sugar and starch and not exercising.
Yeah.
And so if you start to accumulate belly fat, that's the first clue. Okay. And that means you're aging rapidly. And it's not just on the outside where you can see your belly fat, it's on the inside. That affects your arteries, it affects your brain. I mean, they now call it Alzheimer's type 2 diabetes. Most of the common cancers are driven by sugar. Pancreatic cancer, colon cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer, all affected by insulin resistance. So I once was I was at this Tibetan Senator Bob Thurman, who's here. I was at his Menla Center. There was a beautiful conference on longevity, and with Tibetan doctors and Nobel Prize winning scientists, and one of them was a scientist from MIT who discovered one of these pathways, sirtuins, that if we properly activate it, like with the use resveratrol or NAD, you could extend life in animals by 1/3. So for a human, that would be like to live to 120. I said, what it really is causing the disturbance that's leading to all this aging? He said, well, it's sugar. I thought he was going to say, I talked to
one word.
Siddhartha Mukherjee, who was the one of the leading researchers on cancer, wrote The Emperor of All Maladies. When they won a Pulitzer Prize, he said, Mark, we figured out finally what's causing this cancer stuff to go so bad. I'm like, what? He's like, sugar. So now he's doing studies on ketogenic diets, because, humans can run on like an electric car or a hybrid car, run on electric or gas. Gas is carbohydrates, dirty, and fat is electric. It's clean burning. Okay. And cancer cells can only run on carbohydrates, not on fat. So you starve them of carbohydrates, and many now studies have been showing using fasting or ketogenic diets actually can treat or reverse or accelerate the benefits of traditional treatment. So, even stage 4 pancreatic and cancer, melanoma in animal models have been completely cured with a ketogenic diet.
Some cultures are very, the French is a bit like asked about like flour and pastries and bread and bread. What's, if you're into that and you want to reduce, what would be a reasonable amount to have?
Well, I think the key here is, how do we create resilience, right? How do we create resilient, healthy humans where you can handle something, right? So, for example, yesterday I went for a 30-kilometer bike ride up in the mountains. So if I wanted to have a little baklava at night after a meal, it's probably not going to affect me. But if I'm somebody who doesn't exercise, whose system isn't tuned up, whose insulin isn't working, whose all these biological pathways are not properly tuned up, it's going to cause more of a problem, right? Okay. So I think it also depends on the quantity. So having a little treat once in a while here or there is fine. As a staple, it's not going to be good, because over time it will get accumulating to be bad.
And what about the fact that, for example, when you use a shampoo for the first few weeks is going to be, or few years going to be amazing, and then you have to change shampoo or everything. If you're doing the good stuff, then you'll have to do more. So you're aging, and it's going to be even more difficult because you have to make even more effort because your bodies get used.
I mean,
used to
I don't think your body will get used to doing the right things. I mean, it just stays at a good, healthy level. It's like maintenance, right? Like your car. If you just take care of it, you just keep taking care of it. I think as you get older, it takes more work to stay at the same level. So I think, you have to be more attentive to how much alcohol you're drinking and sugar you're eating and how much exercise you're doing, and be a little more particular. So, but it really doesn't have to be that hard. I mean, for example, I have a routine. I can go through my routine I do every day to kind of activate longevity pathways.
Okay. Which is so what's your routine? Yeah.
Which is, basically including as many things I talk in the book, but it includes some lifestyle practices and hormesis practices. Hormesis is a really powerful way to activate these ancient pathways. Hormesis is a stress that doesn't kill you, that makes you stronger, like fasting or exercise or hot therapy like saunas, cold plunges, ozone, hypoxia, all kinds of ways we can activate these pathways. So typically in the morning, I'll wake up after I try to get a good sleep, and I'll wake up and I'll do my strength training, which I use bands. I travel all over the world and I'm busy, so I use these bands at home, and I do a very intense half-hour workout. And if I have more time, I'll do like tennis today, or I'll do biking yesterday if I have more time. And then afterwards, I take a healthy aging protein shake, and I have that shake in my book. And it includes regeneratively raised goat whey. I use goats because it's less inflammatory than cow and has all the right amino acids. And I put in a bunch of things in there like creatine and urolithin A, which is essentially from pomegranate that helps clean up my mitochondria.
Okay.
And so I'll have my protein shake. I'll take a sauna. I have a sauna or steam. I put that on while I'm working out. I go in there for 10, 15 minutes, and then I go in and I put cold water in my bathtub, and I put a cold plunge after my sauna. So, and then I take a handful of supplements. So it's a really simple set of things, exercise, the sauna, cold plunge, shake, and some supplements. And the supplements I use are NMN, which is activating the sirtuin switch, the one I mentioned, one of the ones that is very important for repairing DNA and turning on inflammation. Yeah. I take supplements like quercetin, which is a very powerful activator of some of the other pathways like AMPK. And I take also mitochondrial support like CoQ10 and other things. I also take green tea extract and curcumin and some of these things that are really shown to benefit many of these ancient pathways. So I take a handful of supplements, and then by the time within an hour and a half of waking up, I have really completed a whole regimen that sets me up for the day.
Wow.
And then I can always add more things, but if I want to do extra things, I can do some of these new practices like ozone. I did yesterday here. They have a wonderful clinic, health and healing clinic here at Kaplankaya, and I did ozone therapy. I did IV glutathione and other things. So you can do other practices. We can do sauna and cold plunges. We can do even more advanced things like peptides or exosomes or stem cells, which are emerging as therapies that can be useful for longevity. For
someone who doesn't do like so many sports, like reasonable exercises, can we have too much proteins?
Yes, I mean, you need to exercise more, and you need more protein as you get older. So normally we say the amount that people should eat is 0.8 grams per kilo of protein per day, but that only is important to understand that it's for the minimum amount to prevent a deficiency disease. So how much protein do you need to not get a deficiency? It's 0.8, not how much you need for optimal health or building muscle. It's probably double that. Probably 1.6 to 2 grams per kilo as you get older. So it's really important as we get older, so after 60 years old, to eat more protein and do it at least 2 or 3 times a day when you eat your meals. So it doesn't have to be that much, right? I have my shake in the morning, that's 30, 40 grams. Then I have maybe 4-6 ounces of chicken or fish or meat at lunch and dinner. So it's not a huge portion, but you need that. It's about the size of your palm. And if you're 6'6" and 250 pounds, well, you're going to be having a bigger piece. If you're 5'0" and maybe 100 pounds, you're going to have a little piece, right? So it depends on your size. But,
Yeah, but with so many on Earth and with so many animals to eat, like even without looking at the animal cruelty and everything, it makes a lot of carbon print and
this goes to another whole topic of regenerative agriculture and how we raise animals. But we can do it, and I think it's possible. Now there's even, for example, microbes, bacteria that have been designed to make whey protein. So it's basically a non-animal based whey protein that is actually exactly like it. It's not like in a fake meat. It's actually the real whey protein.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So there's the science is coming up with ways to actually be able to get protein. There's people using insects and all kinds of stuff. But I think,
do you believe in insects? Or
I mean, they're protein. I mean, humans have eaten insects for thousands and thousands of years. So yes, I don't particularly want to eat them, but they have cricket bars and things like that.
We talked about anti-aging drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which one are the best?
Well, I think there's a couple of candidates out there that are pretty interesting. The first I mentioned earlier, rapamycin. Yeah. And rapamycin is, again, from this island, Rapa Nui, and it inhibits mTOR. And when it inhibits mTOR, what that does is it activates autophagy, which is this self-cleaning and repair process. It reduces inflammation, it improves your mitochondrial function. So it has many, many benefits that are highly linked to longevity. So the problem with this drug is you can't take it all the time because it suppresses immune function. But you can take it, let's say, once a week. Some people are taking like 6 milligrams a week. The science, we need more science, but I think it's a very I think a promising candidate for longevity. The other one people are talking about is metformin. Metformin is a drug that is used for diabetes, but unfortunately, a lot of people are using it now. And I say unfortunately because I don't think the data is there to extend life, and it seems to work on this pathway AMPK, which is important, and it does activate AMPK. It does a lot of beneficial things like improve insulin sensitivity and reduce inflammation, but it also seems to inhibit mitochondrial function. Mitochondria are really important for longevity. It also seems to inhibit their response to exercise. So if you exercise, you don't see the improvements in your body when you take metformin. And this is my biggest concern because when you age, you have to be able to become more fit and stronger. Okay. And if you take a drug that interferes with that, what's the benefit? Okay. So one large trial, which was not an actual study, but it was more looking at what happens when people in a population took metformin, showed that it reduced their mortality. Another study just came out, and that's why everybody was using it. Another study just came out that found the opposite. So it didn't really show any benefit, in fact, maybe harm. So these were not studies that can prove cause and effect, but a new one is coming out called the TAME trial, which is a randomized controlled trial. That trial will actually show whether or not it works. And this is where they're randomizing half the people to the drug and half the people not. It's a better way to look at cause and effect, but that's not going to be ready for many years now. But that's going to help us answer the question. But until then, I don't think metformin should be used.
And what about artificial intelligence? Do you think it could help? What's the hope for the future?
Yeah, so the body is so infinitely complex, and we talk about the hallmarks of aging and what influences them, and all the biomarkers, and now we're going to be able to get incredible knowledge from our biomarkers, from both lab testing, biological age testing, our microbiome testing, our genetic testing, imaging of our biology inside. All that's going to have to be processed in ways that help us see the patterns in that data, and that's where artificial intelligence and machine learning can really help us to map out what's happening on a personalized level with each of us and design a plan to properly balance everything. So I've actually co-founded a company called Function Health. The website is functionhealth.com, and it's only available in America, but for $500 you get over 106 biomarkers. You can actually see what's going on with your metabolic health, your hormonal health, your nutritional status. All these biomarkers of inflammation are really important to look at the process of aging. And then it's using machine learning and AI along with your history. It helps to give you a set of recommendations personalized to you based on functional medicine to optimize your health. And so I think this kind of technologies are emerging really fast. And I think we're going to be able to very soon give people a roadmap by looking at their biology. We also have all the quantified self metrics, like whether it's your Apple Watch, your Oura Ring, or continuous glucose monitor. There's going to be more and more of these things that measure our numbers, and all that's going to be going into your health data cloud, essentially, and with enormous amounts of information. And all that's going to have to be processed by AI and machine learning, because an individual doctor can't do that.
If you could invent, Mark, one technology,
Yeah.
easily, what could it be?
If I could invent one technology, what would it be? I think it would be a technology that would heal people's emotional and psychological traumas, because I think it is what's in the way of people properly engaging with their own self-love and self-care. So I'm very excited about the field of psychedelics and its ability to actually help people repair from childhood traumas and other traumas that interfere with our own ability for self-love and then consequently for self-care. Because if you follow everything in my book will help you live to be over 100 for sure, maybe even 120. But if you don't do it because you have all these other blocks, then I think it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
So you have to heal the things that are in your way from actually engaging fully in life. And the purpose isn't to live longer. The purpose is to live more fully, to be more vibrant, engaged, healthy, awake, present, connected, be able to do what you want in life, to be showing up in relationships, to actually show up in the work and do the work you want to do in the world. Those are the things that matter, and not and if we are frail or sick, I mean, it's hard. There's a saying that, a healthy man wants many things. A sick man wants one thing, to be not sick.
Yeah, that's so true.
So I think that's people can have all the money in the world. If they don't have their health, they don't have their life.
What's most likely to kill us? 5 hours of social media or 5 sodas every day?
5 sodas every day.
Yeah.
No doubt. Social media is bad for our minds, but that alone will kill us. But 5 sodas a day will surely kill you.
Okay. Thank you, Mark Hyman. I'm going to end up with the harvest of the day. Is there one thing, if there is one thing that gives you hope, what is it?
So hopeful for where we are in medicine and science right now, because for the first time, I think we're able to create rapid advances that can dramatically impact so much of the chronic disease that's happening. The emergence of functional medicine, of AI, machine learning, and the science of longevity, the understanding of the root causes, the hallmarks, the way this is just exploding. We haven't really looked at this science. We always thought aging was just inevitable and would just happen, but we never really decided to study it. And now over the last few decades, we've discovered so much. So I'm so hopeful that we're going to be able to create a more vibrant, healthy world and population who can contribute and give back and create a better world for all of us.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mark. Young Forever from Dr. Mark Hyman is going to be on my night table. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rose.
Thank you for watching this episode of Harvest series. I hope you like it. If you want to hear more, don't forget to click on the subscribe button and see you soon for a next interview.